This presentation is for Issues in Forensic Linguistics, Module QXL 3346. Forensic linguistics is a relatively new concept within the legal system. It involves several aspects such as authorship attribution, forensic phonetics, verbaling, paedophile communications, and vulnerable witnesses. In my presentation, I'll be focusing upon forensic linguistics in terms of vulnerable witnesses, specifying in rape court cases and how society's views and attitudes towards rape are influential within the courtroom. I will use an example of both transcripts and linguistic studies in order to portray how language use can reveal our attitudes and determine the outcome of rape trials. Despite positive advances in attitudes towards many previously regarded taboo subjects, our attitudes of rape seem to have changed surprisingly little. The view still stands that there can be a portion of accountability for the victim, and that it was not entirely the rapist's fault that the crime occurred. And in some cases, the perpetrator is perceived as the victim. This problem is illustrated clearly in the article Conceptual Manipulation. This blame attitude can be identified within this example, named Figure 2, which was from a transcript of a pre-trial hearing in a case where a 15-year-old alleged years of sexual abuse by her father. Here, the child is first asked basic information and to describe the events that took place during the crime. Then, she is asked what she is wearing at the time of the incident and whether she had any underwear on. This highlights the fact that the court believes that the victim's attire is an important factor within the case, further implying that their appearance was a factor within the crime, and therefore suggesting that the victim may be even partially to blame. This is a clear reflection on what the court and society expect from a rape victim. As in many rape trials, the victims are asked the same question, as it is often suggested and believed that if the victim is dressed in little clothing or provocatively, that they are to be partially blamed for their rape. Does this mean that dressing in a certain way makes you more or less innocent as a rape victim? Sadly, it seems that in the eyes of society, the answer may be yes. As well as this idea of a victim's innocence being questioned, it is widely thought that for a person to be classed as a true victim, they must act in a certain way before, during, and after the crime. If they do not act in this way, the victim is often doubted. This attitude can be seen throughout the media. This example is a transcript from a news program when the presenter, Don Lemon, interviews Joanne Tarshis, who was raped by Bill Crosby. He asks her a series of questions before asking her why she didn't stop the rape by biting a rapist, as if he was doubtfully questioning her behaviour. Examples like this support the reputation of the media being unsympathetic towards rape victims. As well as this idea of a victim's innocence being questioned, it is widely thought that for a person to be classed as a true victim, they must act in a certain way before, during, and after the crime. If they do not act in this way, the victim is often doubted. This attitude can be seen throughout the media. This example is a transcript from a news program when the presenter, Don Lemon, interviews Joanne Tarshis, who was raped by Bill Crosby. He asks her a series of questions before asking her why she didn't stop the rape by biting a rapist, as if he was doubtfully questioning her behaviour. Examples like this support the reputation of the media being unsympathetic towards rape victims. However, social psychologists Karen McGowie and William Stiles studied transcripts of rape cases in court, focusing on the speech acts of the witnesses and lawyers in both direct and cross-examinations in order to highlight the differences in which the victim is portrayed by both parties. These speech acts are highly important, as McGowan's styles illustrate when they state that to establish or impugn a witness's credibility in the jury's eyes, a lawyer may rely on the impression created by the courtroom, as well as on the content of the testimony. This applies to both the prosecution and the defence, both seeking to use speech acts to their advantage. Here, McGowan's styles represent the data collected in a table titled Mean Verbal Response Mode Profiles of Lawyers and Witnesses on Direct Examination and Cross-Examination, where they have categorized the types of responses given according to speech acts as letters. Q, representing interrogatives. K, acknowledgements. I, interpretation. R, reflection. D, discourse. E, edification. A, advisement. And C, confirmation. The key is given here too with explanations. Interestingly, not just the types of speech act, but the intent of the speech act. The letter without brackets represents the intent, and the letter within the brackets represents form. As we can see, the differences between the language used by the lawyers and witnesses in direct and cross-examinations are significant. One of the most obvious differences in the data is the gap between what McGowan styles call pure questions, with the defence having 67.5% in comparison to a mere 42.8% by the prosecution. This is what we would expect, because asking a witness a direct question, such as WH questions, allows the witness more linguistic freedom than those which require only short answers. The defence will wish to control what information is released upon questioning and limit the jury's exposure to the opinions of the witness, meaning they would ask less direct questions than the prosecution, who would want sympathy for the witness and therefore would want her story to be told from her point of view. Another identifiable asymmetry within the data is the higher use of edification by prosecution lawyers in cross-examinations, with particular respect to those with intent of questioning. Edification, which is represented by an E in the table, is previously described by McGowan styles as being declarative and of the third person, with the intent of stating objective information, and is shown to be more than twice the frequency in cross-examinations than direct, with the defence lawyers using 7.3 and the prosecution using 2.7. This is because the lawyer has control over the answer given by the questioned in two senses. The majority of information is already given. This information, therefore, can be linguistically manipulated by the lawyer to a pleasing effect. The other sense of control is the limit that this sort of question creates upon the possible answers. Answers given share a similar characteristics to true or false or yes or no questions, being short and lacking in anything personal. This technique appears to be used throughout trials, not just specifically rape cases. In conclusion, we can see that the media does reflect old-fashioned views towards rape victims, holding them accountable with a portion of the blame, such as their choice of dress, lack of resistance or behaviour before, during and after the crime. However, there is contrasting evidence regarding the presence of these attitudes within the courtroom in trials of rape. On the one hand, objective linguistic analysis shows that the frequency of speech acts during the rape trial reflect those of other trials other than that of rape, suggesting that all cases are of similar format. However, this type of analysis focuses on linguistic frequency instead of content, which is where attitudes are revealed. Transcripts of these trials reveal that they do in fact share some similar portrayals of what a true victim should be as the same in the media. It is my belief that these attitudes may discourage justice. Sadly, this is reflected in the low conviction rate of rape trials. Thank you for watching my iMovie presentation. All figures and references are being displayed.